right, folks, we are back with another episode of Raising the WitchBorn, and today we are going to be covering, I guess if you want to call them the good guy barbarians, the Norn. So, as usual, I'm joined by Cory. Cory is at home looking at some stuff right now, taking care of some stuff coming up in the future that we'll may or may not talk about in a full Scrubber Supremacy episode coming up. So stay tuned for that. But Cory, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Tim. How about you?
Doing awesome, doing awesome. You know, back from work and, like I was saying, had a bit of a stressful day, but that's not why we're here. We are here to talk about some Norn. We're talking about some big, muscly Highlanders and Vikings and barbarians that can also shape change and do some other stuff.
Yeah.
But there was some stuff that you wanted to cover before we got started.
Yeah, when you're playing the Norn, you've got some unusual decisions to make beyond even if you're going to be a shape changer or anything like that. They are the only war clan that has agility proficiencies across the board for all their warriors. What does that mean? That means anybody in the war clan can be elf-like in their ability to shoot a bow or a longbow. And so it's a consideration you got to make going in, because a lot of them also have the shield skill. We talked about that a lot with the dwarves, how important that is.
Yes.
And when you're taking a shield, that a regular shield prohibits you from using a bow or a longbow. You can't mix one-handed weapons and two-handed weapons on your characters. So the Norn do have this alternate, which is a buckler, which is a little wrist shield. Only works in melee, though. So you've got to start to make your decision which way you want to go, because you don't want to be switching out, halfway through, or take the shield wall skill and then decide, oh crap, I want to use a bow with this guy now. So it's just something to keep in mind, and I'll hit on it as we go through this episode in places where it matters.
Right. Yeah. So for those of you listening, we didn't really cover it too much because we're still kind of talking about basics. Again, like your characters can equip, or they can have on their person multiple weapons, but it takes an action to like sheath the put away the crossbow and pull out a battle axe. So if you're going from a two-handed or a one-handed to a two-handed, those other weapons have to be put away before you can use the new ones.
Right. And what we found as we're developing the game is we just told people you can't carry a shield and a two-handed weapon, because everybody was just basically cheating and saying, well, I was just using my one-handed weapon, so I got my shield in my hand. And rather than trying to track 8 or 12 guys and who's carrying what, we just made a blanket rule. You're either going two-handed or you're going one-handed and a shield, just to make it easy. The Norn are kind of the hybrid, because they've got that buckler that will protect them in melee. It just won't protect them from missile shots. The little buckler can't catch arrows too well.
It's not an improvised wall.
Exactly.
Cool. So yeah, we covered that. So let's go ahead and jump in just like we normally do, kind of go into the leaders, spellcasters, and everything else. Now, folks, this episode might be a little bit shorter than the last two because the elves and the guild cover quite a bit. You will find that the Norn and the orcs and even the paladins, as we keep moving along here, are a little bit more straightforward.
We're hoping.
We're hoping anyway. So, all right. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump in with the chieftain.
So every war clan needs their leader. For the Norn, it is the chieftain. And he's got the command skill that we've talked about, and then the shield skill as well, and then a couple that we haven't talked about at all. We'll do pillage first. Pillage is that these guys are scumbags to a certain extent. They're nice scumbags, but they're scumbags to a certain extent. And the leader can pillage anybody that he wounds in melee. So it's a chance to steal a shiny sword from somebody, or some gold glittering in their pouch, or whatever looks good. So that's a nice one to have. All the Norns start with the survival skill as well. And that is kind of a laundry list of stuff that they can do. They can make fire, so those gloom spells that people are casting on them don't do a whole lot. they can swim, which is huge in even the first adventure, Enter Perdition. Being able to swim the rapids saves you a lot of time and a lot of hassle. And then the other big one that you can do with survival is when you take a pelt in the game, that's a way you can skin a monster and get some money out of it. Normally, your guy has to leave the battle map and he's done for the adventure. It's almost like being wounded, except you're off dressing. But the barbarians are so skilled they can do it right there in game and not leave. So it's a little money maker for them. And then the big one.
Got a couple other ways to get money.
Yep. And then the big one is the ancestry, which every Norn makes an ancestry roll before when they're generated. A little bit like the elves had the fairy powers roll. This one is a little different, though. You're finding out who you're descended from. Got a weird glow going across my face. I'll stick to one side here. There's a chance that you're just a mutt. Your parents intermingled too much with slaves and other people over the years, and you have no great history. You could be related to Mylinyar or Vona, who are two great champions of the Norn, and you might know Vona's herbal lore skills, or you might be a really fast runner based on that. And then, of course, the best is if you can draw your ancestry back to the original fates. The original 3 fates empowered men to be able to shape change into their totem animal, be it a bear or a saber tooth or whatever. It's almost like a were creature that has all the abilities of your warrior and then some more as well.
Nice.
And you're supposed to be protectors of the forest and very good guys. So obviously the role is stilted towards you being a mutt, but when you get that nice role and you end up as being able to shapeshift into this giant bear, it's very cool.
Right. Because especially the first couple games, nobody's really going to expect that.
And even when you do make that change during the game, everybody is freaked out by it from other war clans. So like, what is going on? This guy's growing and changing. And you become this giant were creature. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Right. Nice. So that's something that they all get. So it doesn't matter what warrior breed they get. Now, the one thing I will note, though, is that druids do tend to come from a stronger stock. So when you roll your 2d6, you get to add a +1 or -1 to the roll to kind of get what you want out of the druid a little bit easier.
Yeah, it happens a lot where druids do end up being shape changers, or you can be the in-between step where you do have a totem animal that has chosen you, but the shape-changing ability might be something you have to earn later.
Right.
So a lot of fun there. And then should
cool.
I jump in with some of the other warriors here? We've got...
Yeah, so we talked about Chieftain. Let's talk about the Druid a little bit. Like we kind of started on him. Obviously, he gets the +1 or -1 of their choosing to become a shape changer or choose one of the others if they want to do that. They are adepts of Divine and Earth. So those two spells are those two spell schools have what as far as the magic goes?
Oh, you have some of the best right there. You've got basically all that healing magic that the dwarves had, and then you've got some of the great spells that the elves have access to as well. So earth spells are simple things like Entwine, which is you're going to put that down and slow people on their path to get to you. Put an obstruction up there, or put a wall of thorns for your guys to hide behind. And then it goes on from that. Those are like first magnitude. Second magnitude spells, you can start to enchant weapons all the way up to when you're the mean mamma jamma druid, you're summoning elementals and stuff like that to fight alongside your war clan. So there's so much great stuff, and very few spellcasters get to draw from two schools. So it makes it really, really powerful.
Right. Okay. So the druid's a really good spellcaster, along with typically a better ability to become a shape changer. And then so from there, let's go into the normal warriors. So this section is actually a lot. I don't want to say limited. It's not limited, but it's definitely not as big as some of the other races out there.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of choices with these guys. I always say Norn are about potential, and you might make lousy ancestry rolls and go, oh god, I should just start over. Like this war clan is just so steeped in potential. You start with the rogues. Normally that cheapest guy, you're like, I gotta add him to my war clan. Rogues are one of those guys you may want to add on purpose.
Right.
They're really good, and what makes them good is they've got some starting skills that they start with that are rare. You wouldn't necessarily think to take them, but when you get them for free, you want them. And one of them's climb. So as you get into some of the later expansion adventures, there's a lot of climbing to do. You've got the ability to climb without any kind of roll at all. Cut purse is huge. I told you Norn are a little bit of scumbags. I mean, these are your thieves. So you can sneak up to people and steal stuff out of their gear. And sometimes the prices are really good, if people don't have a way to protect themselves. And then the big skill that they start with, especially if you make these guys into archers, because they are fairly weak as far as human warriors go. They're only a 2 strength rather than a 3. But the elude skill, whenever you get tied up in melee, elude allows you not only to evade, which is normally, a dice roll, you get to evade for free, but you can still take a normal attack after that. Normally when any other war clan evades, that's all they can do is move away. So this is letting you back up and take a shot in the face of the guy who was just attacking you, or go do something else. So it's a great little weasel skill that you can't live without.
Yeah, definitely. Elude is one of those skills that if you can get it and you're agility based, get it. Yeah. Let's see here. So moving on.
What your mage is going to want later on too.
Yes, very true.
People are going to tie up your mage because you can't cast spells in melee. This is a way for him to move away and, still get off a spell each turn.
Right. So moving on down, then we have the basic thumping warrior, the marauder.
Yeah, and they don't start with a lot, right? It's shield and survival, basic skills across the board, or ability scores, I should say, across the board. But these guys, you got to think about their potential. Are they going to become your melee thumpers? Are they going to become great missile guys? That's why I talked about, taking that buckler if you're going to use any of the two-handed weapons. Norn have access to some great two-handed weapons that go with those bucklers, and we'll be talking about those later. But he is sort of the generic guy. He's all potential, and unless you get a great totem right off the bat, he's going to be somebody you build up rather than somebody you go out of the box. Gosh, I'm glad I got him,
Right, yeah. So for me, the marauder is the vanilla, where looking at it, it's very basic across the board, but there's so much you could do with it once you start building.
Yeah. Once those guys get up to 3rd level, you've kind of picked a path, and you've made them into that killer melee guy or that support guy or that missile guy. And it's really, I'm the guy who says never make everybody the same. Try a bunch of different things. I do, and it's worked really well.
Right. So that's something that, every time I've looked at them, they're, again, like we were saying, their choices seem limited. They're really not. Basically, because of the fact that their stats are pretty good right across the board as far as your Marauder goes. Like you don't look at him and say, "Oh, I could definitely build him this way because that's what he excels at." You can kind of do whatever you want with them.
Yeah, one of the things that people overlook, because they have that agility access, they can very easily get the fighter skill. And the fighter skill for most war clans is a double. And for these guys, it's really easy to get. And what that does is in melee, you always get to add 1 attack dice. So more dice, we've talked about in past shows, is always better. And
Right.
so guaranteeing yourself at least 2 attack dice, even if you're weaker, that's fantastic.
Yes. And then the next one is the Scald. So stat-wise, exactly the same as the Marauder. However, he's got some different skills.
Yeah. And the Scald is probably the key person in your war clan. This is the one who's inspiring everybody, right? To go off and go into battle and do crazy things. He or she's got some other skills like Opener, which allows you to pick locks in some of the later adventures. But the key one is that Performer skill. And what Performer allows you to do is, it's not magic, but your Norn songs inspire people. So I'll give you some examples. Like you've heard of a standard army march, the guy singing the march. Cadence is one of the songs that he or she can sing, and cadence allows everybody to sprint without getting tired. So
Right.
it's a huge thing to get your war clan across the battle map. A crazy skill song like Leviathan, that's a really hard one to get, hard one to learn, but if you can get it, boy, I'm getting blasted by the sun here. If you can get it, you get the stout ability just like the dwarves had. So the first time you're stunned in battle, that goes down to staggered instead. So it's a way. There's things like Raiders March, which gives a way to rally all the comrades so that they don't rout. A little one that everybody forgets about is Taunt. And every turn that she takes, she gets to mock somebody on the other team. And if you have been taunted, you can't make any rerolls of any sort. So a command skill doesn't help you. A blessing from a spell doesn't help you. Any kind of reroll like deadly aim that you might have built in, you can't use those anymore. So it's a great one to do, and it's often overlooked.
Nice. Okay. So past that, then we have the Berserker. Now everybody's going to look at that and be like, this is naturally the model that I want to take in every single war clan I build.
Yes. You don't want to be without your Berserker. They are they're your thumpers. They're the serious ones, but they are so serious that they have this trait called rage. Rage means that they think anybody who uses missiles is a girly man. So they can never use a missile weapon. They can only equip melee weapons.
Right.
They're never.
On top of that, the other.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was going to say. On top of that, the other thing I want to throw in there is that their psyche is a 1. They're pretty dumb.
Oh yeah, they are not the brightest bulb, but they will never run from melee, and they're immune to certain kinds of mind control. Like an elf can't put them to sleep. I mean, they are going to get in there and they are going to pound and pound and pound. And you can have up to 2 of these in your war clan, and I've never seen anybody sad that they had 2 berserkers.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have 2 berserkers or you manage to afford to get 2 later on, I don't see a lot of people frowning when they put them on the table.
I don't want to overlook 2 of their great skills. Part of the reason why they're so tough. Opportunist is 1, and what that does is anytime after anytime after a round starts, you can say, I want to take my turn now. And so that's the advantage of opportunists. You see an opening and you just go right away. So you don't have to wait for the marshal to draw your shit from the cup. You just go. And then the other one is relentless. And relentless is a lot like the die hard skill, which we may have talked about with the dwarves, but you never strike last with a condition marker. So you sprint, you are staggered or stunned the previous round. This round, when one of your Norn's chits is pulled from the cup, you can say, I'm going to take my turn now and heal or do whatever you can. And in those bad cases where you are wounded, relentless gives you one last turn before your body finally collapses. So if somebody takes you out, you got the chance to thump him back. So it's a great one to get.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on then, let's talk some of the special skills that the Norn have that nobody else can take. So, for example, we've got, well, I guess the best thing to do is kind of go through the list here. We kind of talked about pure blood and what that can do for you. Let's see here. Omen is one that I actually wanted to bring up. So you can actually, so we talked about like the discovery in the game in the very first episode, the basics of playing and whatnot. So whenever you hit a discovery marker and you draw it, it's whatever happens. It's always random. With Omen, you actually allow you to redraw results in the discovery app. So if you get that first one, you're like, I don't like that. You can do it again. So
you had an omen and it warned you that you might see the troll coming, and you can just go the other way and try a different discovery completely. So
right. So this goes a little bit farther than that, though, because it also works on your wounds and your oops results. So in this case, if somebody does a maim or a wound on you, you could actually have them redraw that for something a little less. However, a kill is a kill.
Yeah. It's going to save you. You know, you're going to snap your favorite weapon in battle and, hey, redraw it. Maybe it'll just be something minor like knockdown or something instead. So
right.
It can save you money and it can save your life.
Yeah. Because even if you're knocked down, you could still fight back. But if your weapon's snapped and you're standing there barehanded and you're not a barehanded fighter, good luck.
One I wanted to mention is, you know, for some reason it always takes me a while to talk people into taking it, but barter. And I think the reason why they don't take it is because it's a master skill. But unlike most of the war clans, you can't create your own stuff as a Norn. You don't have a blacksmith sitting there pounding away at a forge. You're either stealing it or you're, you know, cheating people out of things. And so that barter skill is a way to kind of get your equipment much cheaper. As long as it's not rare, you roll a 6-sided and subtract that from the item's cost. And so you're saving a lot of money. There's a couple stipulations. The stuff's a little dinged up, and so it's going to have no resale value. But hey, you know, if I can get some of that expensive totem armor that may cost 12 and I can take up to 6 gold off of that, I'm doing it, because I can play 3 or 4 games and not be able to afford totem armor, but if I'm knocking off half the cost potentially, that's going to really save me in the long run.
Right. And on top of that too, it also helps you, because if something destroys that equipment or you know, or they steal it from you, like that, the value is 1. So even if they get that totem armor from you that you bartered for, they're like, oh yeah, I got totem armor. Oh, but it's got that nice little hashtag next to it, which means that too bad, so sad, it's worth 1 gold.
Yeah. So
But
they
thanks for playing, though.
spend nothing. Yeah. So I'll even do it. I'll even barter for items that are virtually free because just for that reason, if somebody steals it from me, it's worthless to them. So
Yeah,
that's
it's a nice skill. And then one of the other master skills they have is Beastmaster, which a lot of people look at that and they go, okay, that's potential for more models.
Yeah, and that one is fun. You can pretty much look at the back page of the Norn book and it lists all the creatures and the stats that you can get, but who wouldn't want to have, a saber tooth at his side, kind of taking down foes and helping you pile on.
Right.
And
It's a good way to get other animals that aren't just mounts.
And any shadow points your beast earns go straight to the owner. So it's really nice that way. And riding into battle on a mastodon, pretty scary and pretty useful too.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that. So
Yeah.
let's see here. Skill wise, pure blood, we covered that. We got actually, I think we covered most of when we were talking about the actual classes themselves. So again, folks, like even though it doesn't seem like there's a lot of this super unique stuff about the Norn outside of the fact that they can pillage and shape change, that actually leads to a lot of wide variety of what you can do with them because their skill trees are kind of all over the place.
Yeah, it's
actually
really one you want to think about before you start going. And don't, even though you can only have one skald, that doesn't mean you can't have two performers singing two different songs. And this is a great missile race. It's a great melee race. It's just which way do you want to go?
Right. So I guess the next thing to talk about here, since we just mentioned great missile race, great melee race, let's just go right into the weapons because they're pretty scary.
Yeah, and we had talked about you have to make those skill choices, right? If I'm going to use a regular shield or I'm going to use a buckler. They have an item called the boar spear, which nobody else does. It's a heavier two-handed spear. So you're not using a regular shield with it, but the damage is really excellent on it, and the injury roll is even better.
Yes.
No spear in the game other than the boar. Well, no spear that costs 2 gold in the game is going to give you a +1 on your injury roll. That's a table that almost no skill adds to. So you give a guy a boar spear and the thrash skill, and now he is stunning somebody on a 2 or better, and he's taking them out on a 4 through 6. So it is a huge weapon. But again, you got to make that compromise and not go with the full shield.
Yeah, so again, if someone's taking the boar spear, cover is your friend. You're not going to have a shield to help stop missile attacks. That's all there is to it. You have a buckler and the boar spear, and go nuts.
Go nuts. And what barbarian is complete without his greatsword?
Yes.
This is probably the best deal that you can have in swords in the game. It doesn't affect your speed or the number of attacks that you can make, but it does add +1 to your damage roll and +1 to your injury roll right out of the box. So you've got that nice two-handed sword, and you are just, a step above everybody the day you buy it.
Right. And again, it's cheap too. So one of the great things about most of their weapons compared to most of the other races that we talked about up to this point, the dwarves, the elves, and the guild, is the fact that they don't have a lot as far as relic weapons, where it's like you look at the relic weapons, you're like, oh, these are amazing. I can't get them yet because it's starting gear. That great sword being 6 gold right out of the box like that, everybody should be afraid of a Norn with a great sword, even if you give it to your rogue. I don't know why you would give it to your rogue, but even if you did, Stay away from him.
Yeah, it's a great one. And let's say you get lucky and one of your guys at first level gets that barter skill, you're buying great swords for D6 off the cost too. So don't forget that as well. So you can get those nearly free.
Yes, very true. So, and of course we go into like a lot of the beast and pure blood natural attacks. That's the other thing by being pure blood. When you shape change, you actually can do quite a bit of damage just, well, in this case, bear, tooth, and clawed, because of the fact that you're a werebear, you're a wereboar. Like, you have claws, you have teeth. Like, even if you become disarmed, you are not out of the fight. Where a lot of races, unless they have skills to fight barehanded, not recommended ever, you're not out of it as bad as a pure blood because of the fact that like there are so many different like bite and claw attacks that you have access to. So let's talk about the shard weapons just for a second, because these are kind of your two big bold weapons that the Norn have right off the bat. So we've got the Skulled Spear. So this is a rare 6, so it's really hard to get a hold of. It's 9 gold, adds +1 to damage, but +3 when charging or set for a charge. Also too heavy to throw. Now this thing is a bigger, beefier version of the Boar Spear. However, you can actually use this bad boy one-handed.
Yeah, it's really nice for that. So people who do want to commit to that shield and are good rollers, you often go for that Skulled Spear as soon as you can.
Yeah. And then even for what it is, like a lot of people, they look at daggers and whatnot, they kind of frown upon the -1s. But the Uror's dagger for 6 gold, it's not balanced for throwing, so take that for what it is. But the fact that it's a one-handed weapon with 3 attacks, it's only a -1 damage modifier, but it's +1 on the injury modifier. Any hits that you get that go through are going to be doing some serious damage to people.
You see a lot of berserkers wielding this dagger just because any weapon that's given you 3 attacks with one of your best fighters, you're into it. And first skill to add with that is the gash skill. That's going to change the -1 into a +1. So 5 shadow points in with a Uror's dagger, you've now got a +1 weapon that's giving you three attacks per turn. It's pretty nice.
Right. So, moving on to the missiles, they actually have quite a bit in this category because, well, they could pretty much throw just about everything that they have for the most part. So obviously the cudgel it's a free weapon. It's just you're picking up a branch and you're beating people with it. But you could also throw it. So, take that for what it is. Like just picking up a stick and hucking it at somebody, not a bad move. Daggers, same. Yeah. Daggers, same thing. Same as the last time. Always 3 attacks per turn. They could be thrown. -2 damage modifier, short range only. We covered those a lot in the guild because they have a lot of small dagger-like things. The Leaf Spear is this is a missile spear only that you can only throw 1 per action, but it does have a +1 injury modifier. So it's actually really good for 3 gold. So if you are kind of building somebody that's one-handed shield fighter, they're kind of getting up close and personal, but they're not quite there. Having that extra Leaf Spear to just chuck at somebody, great thing to have.
The other place it comes in handy is subtle rule that people don't catch early on. A biggin, when you change into that were creature, when you're a pure blood, biggins can't use 2-handed missile weapons. So they don't have the dexterity to use a bow, and so
it's too tiny. They're like finger plinking it.
Yeah, and so that Leaf Spear gives them something that they can put their muscle behind and just go with. So that's another place where it comes in really handy, and you're always happy for that +1 injury.
Right. So they got your typical longbow, pretty much same longbow and shortbow, pretty much the same one that the elves have. So there's nothing new there. Sling, we covered that last week with the guild. Same exact stats across the board. They also have a throwing axe and a throwing hammer, same as the dwarves. So overall, they're not missile weapon wise. Again, it's not like they have anything super unique, but they have a wide variety of stuff that they can take.
Yeah, stuff that you'd expect barbarians to be carrying. And then they do have one shard missile that is kind of their magic item, and it's Verdandi's arrows. And what's great about those is when you're firing your longbow, that's already +1 to damage. This adds another +1, and then a +1 to injury. So you can take a mediocre archer and make them very tough very quickly.
Yeah, especially if you start loading those bad boys into a longbow, because now you're looking at 2 attacks per turn, damage modifier is a +2, and the injury modifier is a +1. You can't go wrong with that.
And you're shooting people from 20 away too, so it's just crazy.
Right. So yeah, I guess moving on to the armor. Now, one of the coolest things about the Norn armor is that they don't have anything that slows them down.
Yeah, they travel light. They travel very light, and you've pretty much, you're going to take your fur mantle or your lamellar. You can get ring mail, but it's really rare, and it's going to penalize you a little bit.
Yeah, you can't climb or swim, but it doesn't slow you down. Like speed-wise, doesn't slow you down.
Right. But you're going to rely on a lot of other things to protect you, and some of those are just the simple thing. Because you have agility access, you can take a skill called Escape, and that gives you a permanent +1 to defense whenever you want it, and that's an easy skill that you can add at any time.
Right.
You can also add, if any Frank Frazetta fans are out there, you can also add that winged helm that supposedly Vikings never wore, but man, it sure does.
Yeah. Winged helms were a myth. Horned helms were only ever worn during like a funeral ceremony. So Vikings never charged into combat with horned helmets.
Yeah. But in this game, they're expensive, but it's a way to get that extra +1 defense that,
yes,
can really be sometimes the difference between being hit and not being hit.
Right. So the other thing to caveat on top of that, we're about to move into the totem armor next, which is a little bit more expensive. But all of these armor types that we just mentioned, the ring mail, the bucklers, well, not so much the buckler, but like your winged helm, your fur mantle, all that, if you are a pureblood and change, it's destroyed.
It just will not survive. Bursts apart.
Right, where your totem armors do not.
Yeah, and so that's where you're going. The minute you've got a guy with a totem or a pureblood who can make the change, is you're figuring out, how can I get the money to get this, or can I barter for it, or what can I do? And depending on what kind of totem decides which one of the totem armors you get. Like you may have a boar totem, and so you'll buy the boar hide for 12 gold or get it discounted. It's going to give you a +3 to defense, but the totem armors also give you a bonus skill. In this case, it would be Fury. So you make that initial charge and attack somebody and you miss, Fury allows you to re-roll that.
Right.
And the tougher the animal, the tougher the trait that you get. By the time you can afford the bear hide on your bear totem, you get the tough hide skill, which is the equivalent. It's actually better than a shield because you don't have to carry a shield. You just are naturally tough. And
right. So if anybody rolls a shield, it's ignored.
So that's a great one. And the totem armor makes the change. If somebody steals it from you, they get weaned. It is just equivalent to a pelt. It's not worth the 20 gold piece bear hide is not worth 20 gold pieces to anybody who steals it from you. It's worth 4. So it's only valuable to you.
Right. So moving on to other pieces of gear, let's talk about the Norn songs. So these are unique in their own way because they act in a way. Well, first off, some have a prerequisite of a certain type of a instrument that you need to have, but it also creates buffs for your troops.
Yeah, and we had mentioned that a little bit with the skull, but there are, what about 8 different things here that you can do from, being able to make everybody in range relentless, that great berserker skill. You can make them undaunted, so even though they're weaker than the dragon that you're facing off against, um, you don't need a critical to hit. You can get Roar of Thunder is a popular one if you're playing against spellcasters, because you can interrupt his incantation and mess it up, so he can't get that spell that's going to wipe your war clan out with that. That's a huge one.
Right. Yeah, and it also is pretty effective because it's got a target radius of 12 inches around the model, so it covers a lot of real estate on the table.
Yep.
Nice. Okay, so and on that, as far as the mounts go, it's pretty much the typical battle charger horse, the mastodon, and then they have a lot of beasts again that they can train just because of the fact that they are good at training animals.
Yeah, they've got that affinity, and you can literally, we didn't talk about that with the Beastmaster, but you can have 3 weapons equipped. You could choose 1 melee or 1 missile weapon, have a couple more beasts equipped. You could even train birds to go scout for you and make the scout.
Right.
So it's really handy.
Yes. So, folks, that pretty much covers it for the Norn. I know we said this one is going to be slightly shorter than the other ones. It's shorter by about 10 minutes. So, hey, we still stuck within. But, yeah, if you were looking at playing some people that are really, really good at just being very diverse right out of the gate, I recommend the Norn. Cory, is there anything else you want to add in last minute? I think we pretty much covered everything that there is for them.
Yeah, I mean, enjoy them, play them. Just know that there's a bit of a learning curve to them, and out of the box, they're going to seem a little vanilla. They're all about that potential. What are they going to be?
Exactly. Well, folks, that's going to wrap up this episode of Raising the WitchBorn. We will see you next time.